Hilchis Keilim Perek Arba Ve'esrim. Now we learned that oires that are chamisha al chamisha is mekabel tumas medris, but that's only if it's miyuchad and knows it's a keli which is miyuchad lemedris, or you had machshava to use it for medris. Mashen can stamaz if you have a piece of leather, even though it's chamisha al chamisha, and there was no machshava that it should be lemedris, it's not mekabel tumah. But in the Beged we learned that if it's shleish al shleisha, it's roy lemedris and mekabel tumah. Tumas medris. Mashenkim and the Ge'eris was saying that in order for an oiris to be makabel tumah, it has to be either roy lemedris, it has to be something that you are miyachad lemedris, or the pashtus hadvarim of this type of an that it's made for is lemedris. Like we learned, Perek Arba Ve'esrim Elo oiris mistamim b'medris shechoshev olav l'shticha. You have a piece of leather which is at least chamisha al chamisha, and you had in mind that you're going to spread it out on the floor and sit on it or stand on it. Or v'oir shemenichan ala mitas mulmayla. It's an oir which is mechatchila made to spread out on the bed. Lishan olav. Or v'oir shemenichan ala chamer tachas hamasui. You put it under the chamer tachas hamasui, which is normal to sit on it as well. To sit on this oir. Or v'oir shemenichan be'eres tachas hakotin. You put it in a crib under the little child. So again, this oir is bepashtus aimed lemedris. Or ve'er akar, ve'er akesed. Akar is like a round cushion. A kesed is like a long and narrow cushion. But also things you sit on or you lie on. Or ve'er shemenichem tachas hashulchan be'eso achila. It's a piece of leather that's put under the table when you eat. Kedei sheyiplu all of pirurim, in order for any pirurim that falls off the table should fall on this oir, like a little mat, a little rug that you have under a table. Because lapel, you stand on it with your feet, you lean on it with your feet. So b'meila, that's why it's called roy lemedis. Or v'oir shechayger neifetz hapishton olav be'ez sheneifetz. When he's banging out the flax, so he wears a special type of a belt that he puts like a thick belt. In other words, obviously we're talking about something that's at least chamisha al chamisha, and lapel, it's used to protect him while he's doing not to get dirty from the flax, but on the other end, vice versa, it would be normal to use this oir to lie down on when he's tired, when he's in the middle of work. So he'd lie down on this oir, or the oir shechayger achamer olav, a person that's leading donkeys. He also wears a special oir, a type of oir he wears on him, or the oir sheminech hasabel al kseifi beisha sevel. The person that's carrying, we learned it before, a person that's carrying, and in Mamela he puts it on his shoulder in order to protect his shoulder. He has a piece of leather while he's carrying on his shoulder. Or you have a doctor that when he's like taking out, people have pus pimples, so he'd put a piece of leather on his lap. So in order to, when he's cleaning someone's out his pus pimples, so he shouldn't get dirty, so that pus falls on this air. But the vice is this air is cleaned off, and then he uses this air. It's regular for this refi to use this air also to lie on it. It's regular for all these oiris to be yoshev aleim. So again, we started off that oiris and mistam b'medrus, either you have an oir shechoshev olav l'shticha. It was very clearly that you made your mind that you're going to use this oir for shticha. You're going to lie it out on the ground and use it to sit on or to stand on. And these oiris, which are made for these specific purposes, which part of those purposes is to lie on. There's an oir that you put on a bed, you put on a child's bed, or an oir which is being used for other purposes. The mashal is being used to the person that's doing the flax, or he's an oir, or he's leading the chamerim. So they're not really used. Its primary purpose is not to lie on it. But lapel, it's a very normal thing for a person to use this oir to also lie on it. So therefore, it's considered the pashtus emid lemedus. Mipnei shekol ha'eres elu yeshiv alei. V'oir halev shel cotton, or the bib that a cotton wears, sherira yered olav, like saliva comes down from his mouth, and he's wearing it kadeshuli postu b'godav in order for him not to ruin his clothes. His clothes shouldn't get dirty. Or v'oir shel asol l'nosnei alibe b'shas ha'kotzer mipnei ha'shorov, or a type of leather that you put on your heart when it's very, very hot, in order to protect you from this heat. So you'd put it on top of your heart in order to protect you from the heat and the hot winds. Or v'oir shalefim maksusbe, a leather you wrap clothes in it. Or v'oir hatofur kitei v'de'ed, an air which is sewn like a box. Shemanichim be'abgodim shekolelu mishapchan aleim v'neshanim aleim. So all these oires, even though really they have other purposes, their purpose is not to lie on them, but since it's very regular that all these oires should also sit on them and lie on them, so therefore they are all mekabel tumas medus. Halacha beis. Kol ha'eres ha'mistam b'medus, which he mentioned, ein ha'mistam, ad she'yeh bem kishir chamisha tvachim al chamisha tvachim. It has to have the shear. In other words, we learned before that there is a hechatimsa of an air that you cut specially l'moishav, so then you could even not have the shear. But over here, we're not talking about something you cut specially l'moishav. We have a piece of leather, and this piece of leather is normal, or you had in mind to use it l'moishav, or it's normal that it's used l'moishav, but nevertheless, so all of these things have to have chamisha tvachim al chamisha tvachim in order to mekabel tumas medus. Now, ve'elu eres she'ein mistam b'medus. These are the eres that are not mistam b'medus. You know, before we had a list of the eres that are mistam b'medus. Now he's giving a list of the eres that are not mistam b'medus. Er she'chayger seirik hatzemer be'esha seirik. Someone that's combing the wool, and while he's combing the wool, he's also wearing some type of an apron, so to speak. It would be a covering on himself in order to protect himself from these pieces of wool, which will make him dirty. And vice versa, it makes him very dirty, and therefore he's not going to use that to lie on. Or v'oir shalefa be'asemer atzaruk, an oir that he uses in order to wrap this combed wool. So also he doesn't want the oir to get dirty. He's not going to go put a lie down on the floor because he doesn't want the semers to get dirty. Or v'oir shalefa be'argaman, an oir that you use to wrap argaman, which is expensive wool that was dyed argaman, or v'eir hatofur. Or you have an oir atoffer, in other words, you have like a bag, an oir that's like made as a bag. Shemanichem be'argaman, abavekulim mistam b'shartum. They can become tummy b'shartum, is because lepel they have a shtamshus. They're being nishtamish as a beget, or they're mishtamish as a keli. But on the other end, to be mishtamish, that they should have a din of tumas medrus. So now we say those types of oiris, which are normally used, that you're going to lie down on them, so they're mistami b'medrus. Masha'enkin, these are either they're not used for medrus because they're dirty, or they're not used for medrus because you don't want them to become dirty, because it's going to ruin the malacha that they have to do. So either way, since it's not regular for it to be used the medrus, so therefore it's not makamit tumas medrus. Halacha gimel. Er sha'aseh chipu lekeilim. You use the to cover a keli. You have a keli, which the keli batzim could be makabel tumah, but the is being used as a covering for that kelim, is tor miklum, because it's lepel, it's an which is being used as a chipui is not makabel tumah, and the keli is also not makabel tumah. Now, asih chipul l'mishkelis, we learned before that a mishkelis is a weight, something you use as a weight. In other words, when you have a scale, you have a weight, so that mishkelis is makabel tumah. Now, when you have an for this mishkelis, so that's not the same. When we're speaking about a chipul kelim, means a kelim that does work, that does something. You have a table, and then you take an to cover the table. So over here, the purpose is the keli is a functional table, and now you're covering it with an So then we say that she'aseh chipul kelim is not makabel tumah. But over here, the mishkelis is a weight. It's not you're covering it while the mishkelis is functioning. The that you're covering the mishkelis is only to contain the mishkelis. It's containing the mishkelis. Is also chipul mishkelis is mekabel sh'ar tumas shaharei nasa lekabala, because lepel, since it's nasa lekabala, so that's considered. We learned before that that's considered a klei kibul because it gets the form of the mishkelis. Because since lepel you were miyacheret to cover a mishkelis, so therefore it's not mistam b'medrus because it's not miyuchid in order to use as a medrus. Halacha dalet shaso lakeve ule parsose. You have an which was made for your heel or for the bottom of your foot. Is a mchayfes reva regel. If this is going to cover most of your foot, is mistamel. But v'mlav tor, because in order for it to be a medrus, it has to be that you're standing on it. All of you are standing on it. So if it covers most of your foot, so that's considered that it's medrus is that reva of you is standing on it. Masha'inkin, if it's not covering reva of your foot, so then it's not mistamel b'medrus. Halacha hey, manol sha'alo imum. You have a shoe that's still on the form that you're making the shoe on. You know, the shoe was still moist and it was on the imum on this form in order to dry out. No one ever wore the shoe, but it was made as a shoe. It's already finished. It's a finished shoe. So even though no one ever wore the shoe, But Lepel, the shoe is oimed for medrus, and therefore it's mekabel tumas medrus. Halacha vov. Kol oir haroy listami b'medrus, an air which is royal listami b'medrus ve'in nechaser mulacha, is a machshava metamosid, just through having the mind to use it for these particular things. So the machshava is metamosid because it's royal listami b'medrus. And when chishav of lias era shulchan ukiyetzabe, hareza mistami b'medrus, because lepel it's a finished piece of leather. It doesn't really need any work to the piece of leather. You cut already all the sides of it. Everything is a finished piece of leather. It's just you weren't miyachad it yet this leather for a medrus, so it's not makabel tuma. But that, when with your mind, you don't have to go ahead and put it under the table. Even with your mind, you decide that you're going to put this leather under the table, so the leather is makabel tuma. However, v'im chaser mulach, if it's still missing work, the marshal has pieces around that you still want to cut off the edges in order to make it straight, to make it nice. V'im chaser malacha is then in a machshava me'elis bei. Machshava, the fact that you had in mind that this is going to be royal medrus, is not me'elis. Ache di gomer malachti. Chutz min o'er shemechapen bei hamerkab mipnei ha'avok, because you have a piece of leather that you cover over, let's say, the saddle. You have the saddle on an animal, and you don't want the saddle to get dust, so you put oil on it. So maybe you're going to end up sitting on the oil. So over there, machshava me'elis be'afal bli shalei nigbar malachti, because it's regular not to be makbid. And there's certain things you're not going to start putting like a shtickle carpet under the table of leather unless the leather is finished. So memela, so if you had in mind to use it for under a table, but it wasn't finished, then machshava doesn't help. Masha'enkin, by with the that you're going to cover the merkav over there would be regular to use it even if it's not finished. So the fact that it's not finished doesn't change anything. Machshava me'elis bei aval pi shalei nigmar malachti. When we say that machshava makes it, we said before, this whole din, that machshava is metamosei, that's only ba'oir's balabayis. If someone owns this oir, and he's going to use it for himself, so he makes the decision what he's going to use it for. So once he makes the decision that he's going to use it something, which is royal medrus, so memela has a din of medrus, and memela is in the kabel to medrus. Aval eres abdan, someone that's a tanner. In other words, he makes leather, he goes to sell the leather. Shestam on the mechira, but pashtus, he's going to make this leather and he's going to sell the leather. Is Eina Makshav Metamosim, the fact that he decided that this leather is going to be used under a table is not really going to make it this royal Tumas Medrash. Achiyasib Maisev Yechinam Medrash. Because Lepel, since it's very possible that he's going to go ahead and sell it to somebody and that person will want it for something else, so therefore his Makshav is not really definitive. Because his Makshav is not final. Masha'inkin, if he does a Maisa, which that Maisa is making it to be a Medrash, so then that Maisa causes that it should be Makabal Tumas Medrash. Halacha Zayin. Ein Adam Metami b'midris mishkav a merkav she'ena shalei. In order for a person to metami tumas medris, it has to be his own medris. Shnema v'hanigeh b'mishkav vei. In order something should have a tumas medris, it has to be mishkav vei. Now gozal mishkav, a person stole a mishkav, v'doris olav b'lei negia, and he stood on it, he didn't touch it. If he touches it, so anyways he's metami it. Not al tumas medris, but al tumas negia. Masha'enkin, we're talking about if he's a zov, so it becomes a rishon l'tumah. But gazal mishka v'daras olav b'lei negiatar, that's talking about if there was no yish, so it doesn't belong to him. However, in the siyai abayla, but if he knows that he stole something from, there was gzela, and it was in the siyai abayla, was tummy. So the Rambam is naming on that stam gzela, there's no yish bayla, because he knows who stole it, so therefore he's not miyayish. But on the other hand, if we know he was miyayish, so then it's tummy, because then it's considered his. However, Ganav Mishka v'Yoshem, well, it wasn't Gozal, but he was Ganav. So, but as Areza told me, why? Sheikh Necheskose, Shnesyai Shua Bailam, because Sheinim Yedin Migavi, since it was a Gneva, so Gneva is done hidden, whereas the Bailam didn't see the Gneva, so therefore we say that that since he doesn't know who it is, but Pashas he was Miyash, and once he was Miyash, it becomes the Ganavs, and once it becomes the Ganavs, so Memela, his Makshav, so it has a din that he's metami mishkavi. So that's a din. Ganav mishkavi yoshev alav arezeh tami shekes kosei shnesiyai shuabayim she'enim yedin migonvi. So here the Rambam is naming on bepshitus that yush is kena. So it depends. By Gzela bepashtus there was no yush, and by Neva the pashtus there was yush. Neva shadai leinisiyai shuabayim. So then it's Torah because lepel yush is kena. If we know that it was by Gazna, if we know that there was yush, or by Gneva we know there was no yush. So then there was no year. So we reckon with it the way it was. Either there was Yush or there wasn't Yush. Now, Lepeil in Hilchas Gzela, the Rambam Paskins, that Gzela you have to be Magzeh the Chayfetz. In other words, Gzela is not, Yush is not Kena, Yush B'chdi is not Kena. Only Yush and Shinur Rishus is Kena, but Yush itself is not Kena. So explain that Pshat, you have to go to Chumrah. That's it's not so clear whether Yush is Kena. So we hear the Rambam is Paskin L'Chumrah that Yush is Kena, and therefore he could be Matamit. Masha'in Kena over there, the Rambam is Paskin the Yush is not Kena, and therefore he has to be Magzeh. That's how the Mefarshim explain. I mean, the shaila would be, what would be the original Bailam after Yush, and then the Bailam would stand on it. So if we're saying that it's not his, so then the Bailam standing on it wouldn't be able to help. Mashenkin, if it's only L'chumra, so it comes out that if the Bailam stands on it, it'll also become Tamei. That would be the shaila. If that's the Pshat in the Rambam, that the Rambam is only learning that Yush is Kena L'chumra, so it's only L'chumra that the Ganev's Das or the Ganev standing on it is going to help. Mashenkin, if the original Bailam will stand on it, so it'll for sure help, or it'll also help. Anyways, Lefichach, Ganev Shegonav Eir, and V'chishav Olav L'Shchiva, he made the decision. Before we were talking about when he was actually standing on it. And we said that you have to stand on something that's yours in order to be Matamit. And the Shaila is it yours? If there was Yush, it's considered yours. Now we're talking about the Machshava, also certainly has to be yours in order for you to decide what it is. Lefichach, Ganev Shegonav Eir, V'chishav Olav L'Shchiva, and he made a decision that this air is going to be L'Shchiva, is Machshava Miyelizbei. Umistame b'medis. Aval agazlan, since by agazlan b'pashtus there was no yush, is a makshafti miyelis elim kain nisiyai shuabaylim. If nisiyai shuabaylim, so then the gazlan is makshava. It is miyelis because the yush makes it into the gazlans. Halacha ches. Oir shenitma b'medis, and air became tummy medis. V'ischil lekari ritzuis, and then you started cutting off strands from it to use it for different reasons. Is hareu b'tumasei, it remains tummy. Achi matenu pokas mechamish al chamisha tvachim. Knows until it's less than knows chamish al chamisha tvachim is mekabel tumas medrus, and chamish al chamisha tvachim it retains tumas medrus. Once it's no longer chamish al chamisha tvachim, so then it's no longer tamei tumas medrus. Then it's no longer tamei tumas medrus. Halacha tes kol kli er shenitma b'medrus azov, and now v'shino lekeli acher. So you have a keli which is a kli er. And it was royal medrus because it was a keli that also you have medrus on it, and now you change this keli into a keli acher. So it depends. Im shino, you can have two types of keli. You can have a keli which is called a pashut, and you can have a keli which is called a makabel. A makabel means it has a receptacle, and a pashut means it's flat. Doesn't have a receptacle. Is im shino mi pashut lo pashut? In other words, it was originally flat, and now it's still flat. It's just a different type of keli. So nevertheless, it's harei b'tumase. It remains tummy. In other words, even though first it was miyuchid for one thing and now it's miyuchid for another thing, you changed it. But lepeil, since it's mipashid lepashid, harei b'tumase. However, shino mipashid lemekabel umimekabel lepashid, you change the type of keli it is. That originally was a keli that was used flat, and now it's being used as a receptacle or fakert. So then it's tur. However, bebeged, if you had originally a beged and you changed the beged, so then hakil tummy. In other words, the beged was mekabel tumas medrus, and now you change the beged, so then it's always tummy. Ketzad. Chemes shaso shatiach. You have a chemes is like a pouch, something that's a pouch that holds water, and then you went ahead and made this chemes into a carpet. Or v'shatiach, you had a carpet and you made it into a chemes. So even though be'emes a chemes could also be mekabel tumas medrus, and a carpet certainly can be mekabel tumas medrus, but lepel, since it was changed from what kind of keli it is, it's start. Aval chemes shenitma medrus, and then v'asa turmel, you have a chemes which is like a pouch, and you made it into a turmel. A turmel is something which the shepherds put their things into it. A turmel shaso chemes, so they're both receptacles. So then it's harei medrus kshoy. So even though you change the keli that it is, but lepel, the chemes is royal lekabel medrus and the turmel is royal lekabel medrus. So therefore it's harei chemes harei medrus kshoy. Halacha yud kar shel beged shenitma. Now that was benegea oir. Now we said before benegea beged that there's no change. Kar shel beged shenitma b'medrus vaso sadin. So a kar shel beged is l'chura receptacle. You have a car is a pillow that you put things into. So and that car was nitma b'medus, and now vaso sadin, you took this car, you made it into a sheet, a sadin shaso kari kesed. So you took something that was flat, you made it into a receptacle. You took something that was a receptacle, you made it flat. Or begeds, you had a piece of clothes, shaso matpachas, and matpachas shaso keses. You took a matpachas and you made it into into a type of a pillow. You made it into a long pillow, we said before. So you had, again, a flat piece of clothes, and now you made it into a pillow, which was a receptacle. Is harein medus kshoya, is bekitzer. If you have a piece of air, and that air was a tummy tumas medus, and now you change that air from a poshet to a makabel, or makabel to a poshet, so then it loses its tumas medus. Masha'en kein, if you have a beged, and it was makabel tumas medus, and then you change it from a poshet to a makabel, or makabel to a poshet, so then it retains its tumas medus. Halacha Yud Aleph. Keilim she'ikar asiyosim l'kabola u'lemishkov ke'echad. You have a keli, which on one hand is a makabel, and on the other end it's a mishkal. Both of them. Kigein hakorim v'aksoses v'asakin v'amartzufim. All these things, they are makabel. Hakorim v'aksoses are pillows that they have the things inside of it, but you also sit and lie on it. V'asakin are also sacks, and martzufim are like very large sacks, and you fill it up, and you also, it's very regular to lie on them. Is im nifchasu, if they became torn, is afal pishul toaru milistami b'mesu b'shar tumas, because since they became torn, so they're no longer fit to be the receptacle that they were, so they can be mistami b'mesu b'shar tumas mipnei she'enon yechelon lekabel, but nevertheless harein mistami b'medus, they still remain that union of being mistami b'medus. Shaharei hein ruyin lekabel medus, because lepel, we're talking about Keilim, which is Iker Asiyosam, Saifa Kabbalah, and Saifa Medrash. So since Iker Asiyosam was Saifa Kabbalah and Saifa Medrash, so the fact that lost its ability to have Kabbalah doesn't cause that it should lose its din of being Mekabel to Medrash. Avol Keilim, Sh'ikar Asiyosam L'Kabel Bulvat. The main purpose of this Keili is not Medrash. The main purpose of this Keili is to be a receptacle. Kigein Achemes Vaturmal, like you have a keli, which is a pouch, or a turmal is a keli that the shepherds use. The main point is not lemedus, it's lekabbalah. Im hoyu gdelim kidei sheyuruin leishav aleim. They were large enough that you're able to sit with them. Is hoyel v'yeshon aleim b'nei godlim. Since sof kol sof lepel, it's regular to sit on them. That's not their main purpose, but it's regular to sit on them because of their size. Is areim mistame b'medus kozman shein shleima. However, nifchasu, if they lost its din keli, because it's no longer, there's a hole in it, something got broken, and therefore they're no longer mekablim, is afal pishadayin, efshir adayin, leishav aleim, is eimistame b'medus, she'ikar asiyosim l'kabol bovad, hail, bottle mekabel, bottle mistame le'b'medus le'b'shartum. So it's pashut. If you have a keli, which that keli has two purposes, one purpose is l'kabel, and one purpose is medrus, so even though it lost that function of the kabel, because it can no longer be makabel, it was nifchaso, but nevertheless it still retains that function of medrus and memelis, makabel to medrus. Masha'ingan, if you have a keli, be'emes, the purpose of the keli is lakabel, not lemedrus. You don't make these martzufim. You don't that a chemis and a turmal. In fact, a chemis and a turmal, you don't make it to lie on. A chemis and a turmal is made to lakabel. It's just that when it's very large. When they're large, so therefore they're also normally used also medrash, and therefore they're makabel tumas medrash. Since they're large and they're normally used also for medrash, so they're makabel tumas medrash. But their main function was for kabbalah. So memele, if they lose their function of the kabbalah, so then they also lose their function of tumas medrash, because the whole tumas medrash was only agav. And since it's a keli le kabbalah, and agav you're using it for kabbalah, you use it for tumas medrash, for medrash. So mele is matami tumas medrash. But over here it was mechatchila. But masha'inkin, if it's no longer the Kabbalah, so mele it's no longer the Medrus. Nevekame hushiurim v'yiyo ruin lemedus. We're saying the chemis and the turmal, or certain Keilim that are receptacles, and if they're large, they could also be makabel tumas medrus. Now, how large is large? So he says a chemis is a pouch, is shiva kavim. It has to be the size of shivan kavim. Now, a kav is dalid lugin. So we know a lug, we know what a revius is. A revius is a revius haluk. And a kav is dalid lugim. So we have an idea, shiva kav. A yalkut is a keli that also the shepherds use to hold things, a turmal. So that's chamisha. It has to be something that holds chamisha kabim. V'hakluster, which is shetelin be'aseirin b'reisha behema, something that you put onto the head of the behemoth, and that you put barley in for the behemoth to eat. So that's arba. That would be the size of it. Would be four kav. V'hakrisus sheme'orin be'hamayim, something that you use to pour water with. So that's 6 kav. Now pachis mishiurim elu, anything that's less than these shiurim, which he said was shiva kabim of a chemes and yalkot chamishin cluster of a seirim is a cluster which telling be a seirim be'ishabeim is arba, and krisis is which ma'arim be'mayim meso. Pachis mishiurim elu einam ruin lemedus, and vein derech ha'am leishav aleim. So therefore they're not mekabel to masmedes. Now nifchasu, what happens if these kelim became nifchasu, got a hole, and now the tzor became abchas, and you went ahead and tied up the became abchas, so now you tied up the became abchas, so the din is harein teirin uki'ilu leikosh became abchas. So now these kelim don't change by the fact that you were tzor became abchas. When you're tying up the became abchas, these kelim remain tar. So again, so these kelim are really mekabel regular tumas inside tumas medris, and the reason is because it's regular for them to be mekabel tumas medris. Once they lose the ability to be makabel, so they're no longer makabel regular tumah, and they're also not makabel tumas medris. And by tying them up, by making a knot, when they're nifchasu, you have a leather pouch, you're going to tie up on the piece at the bottom of the pouch, and memela, so the lechur will be able to contain the water. Nevertheless, that's not regular, and therefore it's still Torah. Kilo leik kosher became abchas. Now v'chol hachamoses shenifchasu v'tzoriron, all types of pouches that you got, and those they were nifchasu, they got a hole in it, they got broken. V'tzoriron the status chutz mishal arvin, those chamosim that are used by the arvin, by the Arabs, neshikachu darkon tomer, it's regular for them l'tzoriron to go ahead and tie them up. The chemes chalilim ein mestami b'medres shari ein erui lemedres. The chemes chalilim means that there is like a chemes, a pouch, and that pouch is full of air, and that's connected to chalilim, which are musical instruments, and somewhere or another that chalil gives out music through this being connected to this pouch. So if you're going to sit on the pouch, so then you're going to let out the air, and memela it's not going to really function for the chalilim. So therefore, it's not regular to sit on these pouches. So therefore, these pouches aren't mekabel tumas medras.